one is outreach. And there's a couple of ways to kind of do outreach. So the first one is just email people. It's really simple. You can find emails online, you just email them and start talking to them. And what's great about this is that this sales process basically is out there. So you can find a lot of emails online. I worked on an idea once that was trying to reach out to restaurant owners, and restaurants have websites and they all put their emails in there. And so you can kind of find them, just email them. So take some elbow grease, which is kind of all of everything to do with outreach, but very straightforward. Find emails online of the people you're looking for, start emailing them. LinkedIn, similar type of game where you find the people you're trying to talk to on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has search and kind of like filters, and you can dig out them and then you just message them. LinkedIn is especially good if you are targeting businesses and kind of more kind of professional businesses and that kind of stuff, because you often will need to find a person with a certain job title at that company, and you can do that through LinkedIn. It has all that information like out there. So a lot of times I think SME, if you're doing SME focused stuff where you want to talk to SMEs, googling the SMEs and then trying to find emails is a way to do it. And then if you're trying to go after corporations and stuff, LinkedIn is often a good way to do it. But again, you can do both. Warm introductions, I'm just putting this in here. It ends up being an email, but it's slightly different from the email I was talking about before, which is often cold emails where you don't know the person, they have no context for it, you're just reaching out to them. Warm introductions are going to your friends, colleagues, families, or whoever and asking them for introductions of people that they know who fit some type that you're like looking for. So, for example, if you wanted to get introductions to kind of SMEs and stuff, you could ask your friends and colleagues and family who they know that runs an SME business and whether they will willing to kind of introduce you or not. All of these warm introductions tends to be low volume, high conversion in the sense that like if you get a warm introduction, they're more likely to talk to you, but there's a limit to how many kind of warm introductions you can get. Whereas LinkedIn and email is like almost bottomless on some level where you can just like reach out to tons and tons of people. Okay, the pros and cons of this one. The first pro for both of these is it's completely free. It all just kind of takes elbow grease and some kind of like hard work, but they are all free. You just start talking to people. The second pro here is salespeople basically make a career out of this on some level. And so there's an entire industry of sales tools and CRMs and automation and lead generation and all of that kind of stuff. And so you can leverage all of those tools to kind of help you do validation. So I know you can get, for example, if you really wanted to reach emails and SMEs, it is possible to find websites that have already gotten those leads, and then you can pay them some amount of money and they'll give you like 1,000 of those leads and you can reach out. Mileage varies a lot with those lists, but they exist. They're out there. They're primarily for salespeople. So you can just kind of like use the things that salespeople use and use that for validation. So that's great. Gives you kind of a quick way to kind of get in and use it. The cons here is unlike paid marketing, no automatic data capture. You can use some sales tools who will try to do this a little bit for you, but there's always some manual setup and you've got to kind of figure this out a little bit. So, in order for you to do validation well, you're going to have to capture some data. We'll cover this later, but you're going to have to do some work just to stay organized so to make sure you're kind of capturing data with this channel. The second thing here for cons is again, there's learning curves to all of these. I find in having worked with kind of quite a lot of founders now that the learning curve on this one is a little bit trickier. I find that people really struggle with doing kind of outreach and sales for the first time. When you're kind of doing ads, you can kind of like run a new ad and you can kind of try it out and you can get those numbers and it's kind of relatively, it's not straightforward, but it's like you can kind of piece it together a little bit more. Oftentimes when people are doing this validation, let's say you reach out to 100 SMEs and nobody replies to your email, it just feels kind of like a black hole where you're like, what does that mean? What do I do now? And so the learning curve is kind of tough here. And so that's something that you just kind of have to know going in. The types of businesses that this is useful for is this is very clearly a B2B thing. If you think about like you were starting some new like social app, there's no way that you would be like reaching out to people on LinkedIn to be like, you should download my like TikTok clone or something like that. This is very clearly like a B2B move. This is how B2B sales actually works. And so everything I've talked about here is actually B2B sales. You're just doing B2B sales before you actually have the product in order to validate it. I actually also think this is a very useful thing for founders to learn if you're intending on starting a B2B startup, because everything you learn on how to do this, you will continue to get gains on it if you actually work on the idea and you're actually trying to kind of do sales and grow the company. It looks very much the same as this. So this is a great thing to learn if you're in a B2B idea. Highly recommend doing this.